And this session is certainly of crucial importance for the way that we all trade today, the technological world that we live in. And of course, it's very important for sustainable development. And this title is e-commerce, electronic commerce. Simply put, of course, it is the buying and the selling of goods and services, or the transmitting of funds, or the transmitting of data across electronic network, which is primarily, of course, the internet. Now, I think we're going to quickly come out here and change these name tags. Here we go. So while we're doing that, let me just paint the picture for this session. In this 21st century, this technology revolution that we all live in, we are watching before our very eyes this incredible speed of the technology that is consuming us, it's consuming our day-to-day lives. We have ever more friendly user technology. We have increasing penetration of the internet globally. And we know e-commerce is witnessing a growth explosion. Do you know the global online retail market is now topping $1 trillion US dollars every single year? That is set to double in the next 4 years. Let me give you an example of just one market, the world's biggest online market, China, of course. Earlier this month, as we do every year, we got to see China's Singles Day. You know China's Singles Day? Yeah. No. China's Singles Day is on the 11th of November, the 11th of the 11th, and it's where China's unmarried men and women celebrate their single lifestyle. And how do they do it? They go shopping for 24 hours. It is a 24-hour shopping bonanza. Who's from China in the audience? Put your hands up. One, where are you? Come on, there's 1.2 billion of you. You've got to be some of you here. Hands up if you're single. Did you go shopping? You spent a lot. Well, you helped to do this. You know Alibaba? I talk about this company and the wonderful Jack Ma, who's done an incredible job. He's the founder. Alibaba, I tell my audience around the world if they haven't heard of him, Alibaba, if you take PayPal, eBay, and Amazon and combine them, that is Alibaba. That's how big it is. Alibaba hit $5 billion of transactions in the first 15 minutes that the sale started. Actually, less than 15 minutes. Within 30 seconds of the sale starting, 97% of sales were generated through one of these, a mobile device. The peak number of transactions per second, the peak number was 325,000 transactions. Think of the payment, the online payment transactions that go along with something like that. And finally, the total amount of money spent in that 24-hour period, $33 billion. Last year, it was a record at nearly $18 billion. So there is a perfect example of e-commerce growth exploding. So look, ladies and gentlemen, there are no surprises that many companies, especially small to medium-sized SMEs, are seizing the opportunities offered to enhance their participation in the global markets, to increase their market access, and of course to develop their exports. Taking some of the topics we just touched on in the last hour, we know that improved information and communications technology, improved transport connectivity, better legal and regulatory frameworks, and better payment systems, or solutions I should say, they're richly enabling more and more countries to take advantage of the opportunities offered by online commerce. But we also know that the world is currently, I guess you could say, currently facing some challenges. I know I just mentioned those huge numbers, but believe it or not, there is still a limited uptake of e-commerce with regards to trade in goods and services. And that reflects some of the critical constraints that we're seeing. What are those critical constraints? The limited knowledge, we know this, the limited knowledge of regulators around e-commerce and its application. We always say that the regulators, no matter where they are in the world, the regulators, they seem to struggle to keep up with the speed of technology. The speed of technology whizzes by, and the speed that regulators go, they're always trying to play catch up. Affordable infrastructure, it's a constraint. Infrastructure, internet infrastructure, ain't cheap. Trade logistics, including customs procedures and trade compliance, the speed of cost delivery, warehouse fulfillment, sorting, distribution, parcel returns. What we need is we need a global standard. We also look at a constraint of online payment facilities. There we need a universal connectivity among the banking and the non-banking players. And of course, we need safe and secure transactions and electronic payments to customs. We then, of course, have the issue of consumer protection, big data protection. That's a big global issue at the moment. And another huge global issue is the ever-increasing number of hack attacks, cyber crime. What measures do we need to put in place to counter cyber crime? And finally, the limited skill set out there. You know, I often talk on my shows about, we have a shortage of coders in the world. We need more people learning how to code. But we need an increased awareness about the implications of e-commerce. What we really need is better digital literacy. And again, I'll say it again, we need universal standards. So can I ask our panelists to come on out, please? Welcome. Okay, while you're taking your seats, I can start with Andre Shabina, ladies and gentlemen, who's Visa's Digital Solutions Director for Southeast Europe, CIS, and Georgia. Welcome, Andre. Next, Andre, we have Anna Inoholza, Director of Compliance and Facilitation Director at the WCO, the World Customs Organization. Next to Anna, we have Francois Daven, who is the Secretary General of, did you say OTIF? Or OTIF, yeah, which is the Intergovernment Organization for International Carriage by Rail. Then we have, I've just got George Melishvili, who is the Executive Director of the National Bank of Georgia. And then we have Mutia Mutusi, who is the Director of the Executive Office of the UPU, which is the Universal Postal Union. And last but not least, Dr. Fon Wei Zheng, who is a Senior Fellow and Director of the Department of International Political Economy, which is IWEP. That's the Institute of World Economics and Politics, and that falls under CAS, and CAS is the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for our panelists. So we'll get cracking. George, your 4 minutes starts now.
Okay, thank you. First of all, allow me to use this opportunity to thank the organizers and all participants of this forum to create a very efficient platform for discussion. Let me state that e-commerce has a significant role to play in the development of trade worldwide, especially along Belt and Road. And therefore, e-commerce industry is rapidly growing over the past decade and will definitely continue to do so. Importantly, rapid expansion of the internet and use of mobile devices in 65 Belt and Road countries in emerging markets is a significant reason why e-commerce is growing along with the better payment options and advanced shipping. Notably, during the last few years, e-commerce has developed substantially in Georgia, supported by the development of broadband internet networks and services, and stable growth of internet users that lead to increasing the demand on e-commerce. And another contributing factor is that the commercial banks in Georgia offer a wide range online payment system to their customers. Additionally, active steps have been taken for developing e-government system in the country, which promoted introduction of several e-services and online payment for the government services, harmonized to EU standards and directives. Also, the government of Georgia put much effort to develop cybersecurity, which resulted in gaining the 8th place in the Global Cybersecurity Index. Another important point for creating a coherent e-commerce system, among other things, is to develop the skills and capacity of households and SMEs, which will enhance their trade performance. And lastly, one of the main elements of efficient e-commerce processes is online payment systems. Therefore, to develop them, especially to support cross-border transactions, it is important to create common standardized rules and regulations, thus enabling interoperability of various payment systems. Regulations and regulators of payment systems play a core role in the achievement of these goals. It is important that their joint effort enables development of such norms and standards, which will lead to making payment systems more efficient and reliable, and eventually contribute to development of e-commerce. The National Bank of Georgia attached significant attention to develop of payment systems in the country, and is ready to take part in all the initiatives which will actually contribute to the development of cross-border payment systems in Belt and Road countries. All this makes me fully confident that the Belt and Road countries will successfully meet the challenges and achieve best possible outcomes. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, George. Thank you. Andre, you're on the list.
Yeah, I know. So first of all, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure and it's an honor for me to participate in this panel and actually to be in this beautiful, warm, welcoming city of Georgia, the capital. I think what I would like to start with is for all of us to forget for a moment that we are subject matter experts either in trade relations or maybe in payments like myself, or in politics or in customs. Let's imagine that we are just ordinary customers. Customers, either private individuals or enterprises, willing to buy something in the e-commerce environment. And I think many of us would recall times when we were uncertain about the checkout process when we are trying to make a payment, or we had lack of trust because of the uncertainty whether this site is secure enough to make a transaction. There might be different situations with the dispute process, etc., and so on and so forth. Obviously, these are the hurdles that nowadays we are facing in the e-commerce environments, and these are the problems that we are trying to solve globally and locally with our partners. And also, it would be also important to mention that e-commerce payments in online environment cannot exist without the developed payments in physical world. And this is where it would be only fair to say that Georgia has already embraced the face-to-face electronic payments and has developed a very good set of products for the end customers, which represent either cashless payments via cards or even mobile wallets, when almost 1 year ago, Bank of Georgia was one of the first banks in the entire Central Europe, Middle East, and Africa region launching its mobile wallet for the Georgians. And I think having done some good work in terms of the development and proliferation of payments in physical stores, we should now be thinking of the development of e-commerce environment in Georgia and within the entire Belt and Road Initiative. And this is where the development of e-commerce is at the stage when a certain number of standards is being developed worldwide to facilitate the development of online transactions, online payments. And the standards are tokenization, the secure storage of customer payment credentials to avoid misuse, exactly to the point that Aaron was mentioning in his intro speech. The second would be the development of the secure remote commerce, which is actually a standard which will provide the entire ecosystem with the same set of requirements and transaction flow across all of the merchants. The last but not the least is the security part of this picture, and this is where the next generation of 3D Secure is being currently rolled out worldwide in order to ensure that a legitimate customer is initiating a transaction in e-commerce environment without the hassle of additional security checks. To finish my intro note, I would like to stress out the fact that while we are developing the e-commerce environment, we should always be keeping in mind the end customer and the needs of the buyer. And there are three things that we should be thinking of always in order to make e-commerce successful. We should either add convenience to an e-commerce payment or making a transaction, we should subtract a pain point, or we should add a value in a new way. Thank you.
Thanks, Andre. Anna?
Everybody's very quiet. It is my great pleasure to be here back in Georgia with all of you. I'm very honored to be on this stage with such distinguished panelists. I will try to be very concise in my presentation. As you heard Aaron during his opening remarks, e-commerce can be a lot of things, and it is many things. Clearly, it could be trade in digital goods. It can be trade in services. It can be a lot of things that you do online. It can also involve discussions related to e-commerce. Also involve things like what the internet accessibility is around the world, and a lot of what Andre was speaking about with regards to mobile payments. In many cases, e-commerce starts out as online purchases from a domestic market, where you're buying from stores locally. And of course, now it has exploded into what turns into cross-border purchases. At the World Customs Organization, we've been working on the topic of e-commerce through a working group for a little bit over a year. We believe that everyone today will agree that there are many, many opportunities that can be leveraged in what is the dynamic world of e-commerce that will give access to developing countries for new markets, both to buy and to sell. But even for non-developing countries, there's lots of great opportunities that can be leveraged. And I think that with regards to specifically the topic of this forum, the Belt and Road Initiative, e-commerce has exploded. The cross-border movement of physical goods is exponentially growing year after year. I refer to this as the tsunami of small parcels crossing borders. And this exponentially growing wave of parcels arrives at the borders, whether it be via postal operators or via the express couriers that are bringing with them many challenges and really a number of threats to national governments and to the citizens and to society as a whole. The slide that you've been looking at, which I won't be going over in detail because I don't have enough time, obviously, are a listing of some of the specific topics that our working group has been covering and trying to tackle, specifically in the 4 subgroups related to trade facilitation and simplification, safety and security, revenue collection issues, and a much less known area which is measurement and analysis of the data of what this volume is. This huge wave of parcels and the pressure to process the wave quickly, the border systems have truly been overwhelmed, and this has enabled many criminal organizations to take advantage of the bigger volume of packages to introduce their illicit goods, and also to take advantage of what they see as reduced liability. If drugs, weapons, or even counterfeit medicines are discovered in these packages, it is much harder for the authorities to actually arrest the perpetrators and bring them to justice. And the dangers of counterfeit goods and medicines cannot be emphasized enough. Whether it's dangers for homes catching fires, cell phones exploding near people's faces, or even the incredible danger of fake or falsified medicines making it into the domestic market are huge dangers that are affecting all economies, both big and small, developed or developing. We are exploring a number of opportunities, wrapping up, I promise.
Thank you.
Number of opportunities that we believe will help legitimate goods and the e-commerce of cross-border physical goods continue to thrive and be even greater benefit to all involved. On the slide, there's just a few of the areas that we are exploring to make the processing of parcels simpler, more streamlined, and with proper risk management system to make it safer and even more secure. The key to these opportunities is the exchange of data amongst all actors, and I'll stop there.
We can talk about that, actually. We'll bring that up, because that has to be a key challenge, I'm sure, is sharing that data. Well, let's go from customs to parcels, then. Mutia, why don't you give us your 4 minutes?
Thank you very much, moderator, and thank you for calling me just after the customs, because we have a very good working relationship. Yes. Universal Postal Union is a specialist agency for the United Nations, tasked with the development of the post globally. Now, why we are here, first of all, is to listen and to learn of this project, because it is of a lot of significance to the post. Because where we are talking about physical delivery, transport, logistics, and all transport network is an area of a lot of interest within the post. Moderator, when you are introducing this panel, you talked a lot about the internet and the connectivity. We have all heard about so many internet of things, everything internet. But there is one thing that has not been replaced by the internet, that is physical delivery. So all these things that people are aggregating on the internet, finally they have to be delivered by somebody. And that is how we are positioning the post to be a choice to deliver. And we are doing this because we are leveraging on our network. We have the largest network worldwide with over 700,000 outlets where we can do this. We know all of you people where you live. We've been delivering other things there, so we will come and deliver this. So that is the interest that we are having, and we believe that from sharing, and in this panel, I need to be very thankful to the organizers. I'm sitting around with many partners who we do this business together, so that when we are talking about transport, when we are talking about custom facilitation, when we are talking about other regulatory platforms, when we are talking even about financial inclusion, which is very key in buying and selling online, we have all these partners here, and we believe that this interaction is going to bring a lot of value into the post. And yes, because everybody has a postal address, we'll get there and be able to deliver to you. Thank you very much.
That's until drones start taking over and delivering. You'll still be working with that? Okay, we might touch on that. Francois.
So thank you very much. So I'm Francois Daven from the OTIF. I'm very honored to have the opportunity to express what are our priority concerning Silk Road. I would like perhaps first to recall our raison d'être, which is Unified Railway Law to connect Europe, Asia, and Africa. If you read that, you think that, well, everything will be fine for parcel delivery between China and Europe. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't work like this, because rail has a very severe drawback. We have still no global regulation for rail. What you see on the map is that basically OTIF in deep blue and the other colors is covering the whole EU and part of North Africa, and we are going up to the east to Pakistan. It's obviously not sufficient to organize delivery of parcel between China and Africa and within Central Asia. despite there is an interest on global regulation for rail, since we signed MOU with China and also with GCC, which is developing a network. So we think that it will be possible in the short run to develop this kind of services. But what are we lacking exactly for developing this kind of services? In the real life, as you can see, for the postal operator, it's relatively simple if you are delivering things by plane. You just collect the parcel, you have an originating postal operator, then you have a pipe and you decipher, and that's okay. For rail, it's very complicated since we have two organizations. When you need to change carrier in between of your journey between Europe and Asia, then it's very difficult to say that rail is now the backbone that we need for the land transport, for the delivery of parcel. So that's the reason why we had a policy of MOUs. We have MOUs now with WCO to simplify the formalities. We will soon have a MOU with UPU when it comes to postal question. Why the reason we have an MOU is that if you see the map with all the corridors and the networks that are existing today, you have software and hardware problem. I will start with the hardware problem, which are delicate, but I think that can be solved by intelligent terminal, for example. You can see on this drawing that there is different gauge between Russia and China, between Russia and Europe, and even between India and the rest of Middle East. So there is also a lot of technical problems, but if you have a look on this map, you can also realize that if we are working together, it was announced in the previous panel, we can define a backbone for mobility in trying to work together on defining the right interfaces. And that's where software is important, and basically in OTIF we are providing software, like in WCO and in UPU. We are delivering the good software for being sure that all the information we need all along the way are indeed useful and can be delivered in a uniform manner. And in particular, we are trying to work on data sets that can be the same irrespective you are under the COTIF regulation or under the Russian or Chinese regulation. I think that's one of the most important aspects, and I will finish by this statement, that we need to, all of us, think what should be the operating system for this wonderful backbone for mobility that rail can constitute. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Francois.
Thank you, moderator. And I'd like to make a brief introduction about China's development of e-commerce. First, I think the scale of internet and mobile internet users are huge in China, which creating the conditions for development of e-commerce. The popularity of the internet, especially the mobile internet, has brought the prosperity of e-commerce in China. Some institutes predict that the scale of China's e-commerce market will reach 24 trillion yuan in this year, increasing by 18.6% year on year. And the moderator has introduced the Singles Festival of China. But as I know, the mothers and the wives are the main buyer in this Singles Days. And the sales reached a new high in this year. And the cross-border e-commerce has also played a more and more important role in China's business. The export of cross-border e-commerce is expected to reach more than 7,000 billion yuan, and the import of cross-border e-commerce is expected to reach more than 1,800 billion yuan this year, which means the share of the turnover of cross-border e-commerce to China's total international trade value is more than 30%. Obviously, China and the other Belt and Road countries will benefit from the cross-border e-commerce. And the development of e-commerce in China has received strong government support. President Xi Jinping said, "We are willing to strengthen cooperation with other countries and to promote investment and trade through the development of cross-border e-commerce and the construction of the information economy demonstration area, and promote the development of global digital economy." And our Premier Li Keqiang also said that the Chinese government firmly supports the development of e-commerce and the cross-border e-commerce. And the Vice Premier Wang Yang said that China and the countries concerned could strengthen the cooperation of e-commerce and other fields, and the Belt and Road Initiative should be built into a road of opening up. And our central government has issued 5 documents on the development of e-commerce during 2 years. And the government also issued a 3-year action plan for promoting the development of e-commerce. And last but not least, the companies or the enterprises is also key factors to promote the e-commerce. Yeah, some of them is well known, such as Alibaba, as Taobao, and some of them will be known soon in the future. And I wish and believe that the e-commerce has a bright future in China and other Belt and Road countries. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fong. Okay, let's set the clock for see how much time we've got before we all break for lunch. But George, can I just start with you? Because, I mean, there are a lot of challenges, but one of the biggest challenge, obviously, for e-commerce is developing an online payment system among all the B&R countries. Can that be done? Can you do that?
Yeah. Thank you for the question. One of the biggest challenges to develop online payment systems among all Belt and Road countries is weak common standards and regulations. As you know, all countries, mostly all countries, have their own requirements related to such systems. Therefore, it is extremely difficult for businesses to manage effectively their cross-border operations among these countries. I would especially underline the standards and regulations related to data protection, consumer protection, and cybersecurity, which are the most important elements for reliability of online payment systems. To deal with this challenge, actually, regulators should develop common principles and approaches related to technical and legal challenges, and then implement these standards in their countries. Eventually, it will allow the private sector to expand their cross-border operations among Belt and Road countries.
Andre, I almost want to say that pose the same question, but it's the challenge of just this multilateral cooperation, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. And to the point which was just right now expressed by the governor of the National Bank, I would also like to add that these problems, these challenges that you are trying to solve for, they are not unique for this specific region and for this specific initiative, right? And we, as an organization working in the payments and technology industry, are already in cooperation with the other players, as well as the association, which is called the EMV Committee, which is actually developing a set of standards solving for these issues. The ones that I have already mentioned quickly, for example, the secure remote commerce standard, which is actually standardizing the way how merchants will interact with the buyers, with the consumers, right? And the second one, which is also important, is the protection of the customer data, whether it's the payment credentials details or the personal data of the customer, the digitization or tokenization of this data is also a standard which was developed and recognized by all of the industry players already in multiple markets around the world. So I think what should be stressed out here is that we're here not just to actually promote the usage of our goods or services. We are here to help you in bringing the expertise, in bringing the knowledge, in bringing the best practices from around the world in actually developing such online payment systems.
And I'll let the audience know, you and I were speaking before, earlier this morning, the wheel's already invented.
Exactly.
So we don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
We need to embrace the wheel that's there, right?
Right. And one more small thing, we are always thinking of developing new stuff as kind of innovation. But currently we are at the stage when innovation is not about bringing some new technology. It's about taking away the bad things out of the process, out of the e-commerce chain. That's where the, the success lies in, and this is where we are here to help with the National Bank of Georgia as well as the other e-commerce players.
George, it's the same. It's on the same subject, so I'm not branching out. But do you think it is achievable, a universal standard, if you will?
I think so. It's a big challenge, as I mentioned previously. But I think regulators should stay together with the business and try to develop the more effective regulations related to e-commerce and online payment systems.
Okay. Anna and Matua, I found this really interesting in your opening remarks, and we'll pose a question about it. But e-commerce is kind of a pain in the butt for you, but it's a godsend for you. No? Is that in a nutshell, that's kind of right? All the issues that it's created for the customs.
Well, I think that the customs administrations, and when I say the customs administrations, I really mean the border regulatory agencies, because at the border there's other agencies that are involved, but customs generally is the face. I think that, the customs organizations live to properly inspect and process the goods that are crossing the border, whether those goods are coming in containers off of a vessel, whether they're coming off of an airplane, or whether they're coming in small little boxes. The reality is that this tsunami of small packages has arrived at the doorstep of many of these border agencies without the proper resources, because it was expected that this is something that just is part of the same work, but in fact the trade has changed. And some of the stuff that used to come in containers is now coming in lots and lots of small packages. And so that has changed the way the border agencies are having to deal with the tsunami. I wouldn't say that we hate e-commerce.
No.
We actually love e-commerce, but we have big challenges with it.
Yeah. Francois, can your area help in that? Why don't you put customs people on the trains?
Well, I don't know if we can help, but I think World Custom can help us, but okay, that's more this way around. But I think it's more from conceptual point of view, because what I was trying to say, addressing the fact that rail has to become a backbone, is that we should be able now to switch containers among this backbone. And switching container about this backbone, that means that we have to set up the interfaces, the proper interfaces, when this precise container is full of little parcels. And that we have to organize with World Custom Organization. In a way, it's a little bit what you have in your own computer when you are sending mail with the internet. Obviously, you are sending small messages, but at some point you have to analyze those messages, to group them, and obviously between China and Europe, it's not the IP protocols that is taking care of the messages. That's something a little bit bigger. And we hope that in developing good software for rail can be this backbone. We can encapsulate all those little parcels, having them transporting all along the network to the destination with good security procedure, and we hope that will be the added value of a land route using rail.
Fong, can I turn to you? Because taking the experience from the world's biggest online market, of course, as I've said, China. What's the role of SMEs? What's the role of the small to medium-sized businesses to help drive e-commerce along the B&R?
You mean the SMEs development in e-commerce?
Yeah. What is the private sector? How does the private sector help drive? Yeah, the expansion of e-commerce along the Belt and Road, taking the experience from what we've seen in China.
Yeah, the private sector, they act very active actors. As you know, the infrastructure is very important for the e-commerces. But in China, one of the most important infrastructure is offered by the private sectors, which is a payment system. And we have the WeChat, which is a tool for communicating. But now we can buy everything through the WeChat. And the other B2B business platform is Alibaba. And we can use so-called 支付宝. And this is another payment tools. And this payment tools is issued by the private sectors. But on the other hand, I think the government is also important because they can play a role to make these tools do good for the people. Yeah.
Anna?
Yeah, I wanted to chime in on the question
please.
to him on this, because I think that a lot of people think of e-commerce and automatically think express, and the package is going to get there within 24, 48, or 72 hours. I think that the system is changing, is becoming so mature that there are a lot of online retailers that are offering different options with regards to delivery. Maybe you don't need your package in that shorter period of time. That's where the opportunities are for the Belt and Road Initiative, because a lot of those you could come up with efficiencies where you have more consolidation and take advantage of the rail environment, maybe some of the trucking environment, because air is expensive. To send these packages via air is expensive, and in some cases, some of the products are dangerous to send through the air security protocols. So lots of opportunities there when you're looking at how e-commerce is maturing enough to be able to separate what needs to be super fast and what can take a few days to get across.
Because the fact is that we that are used to having a delivery, I'm not going to wait for 2 days. I've got Prime. I can get it in 24 hours. That's our expectation, though, isn't it? Mudia, can I ask you on the sort of the same thing, your opinion, your thoughts about the private sector playing an essential role in this, right?
Yeah, obviously the private sector plays a very key role, because even the posts themselves are becoming private now these days, because they have seen the model where the post was always attached to the government or to the ministry. In many places, it's not working very efficiently. So the private sector has had to come in and also play the roles that initially would have been played by the postal services. Now, there is also some challenges that have come around with e-commerce, which, again, within the postal sector, they are quite posing a challenge to be addressed. Now, these are like security standards. When do you deliver what you are supposed to deliver? How secure is it? The trust. But the other fundamental thing that has to be addressed as we talk about e-commerce is financial inclusion. We have over 1 billion people in this world who have no bank account. And therefore, they don't have payment systems as we know them online. But we don't want to exclude them from this trade. So what do? So we have situations where even in some parts of the world, you actually deliver fast, and then you find somebody waiting at the door to pay you cash. So this e-commerce bit is so expansive, and it is important not to leave anybody out of it, but to innovate and see situations where you don't have the conventional way of paying online. how do you address those people? And there are many of them, and they want to get involved in this business. Thank you.
Yeah, it's an untapped, an untapped market in many cases. We've already touched on about the regulators, and I mentioned in the opening, it's common knowledge that regulators are always one step, if not more steps behind the speed of technology. How do you ever, Andre, I'll point this to you, how do we ever get the regulators on board? To get them to catch up and, you know.
Yeah, so actually we have a very good practice which is present in a number of markets of our sub-region of cooperating directly with the regulators by establishing a multi-year roadmap, which is obviously revisited on an annual basis, and if there are any updates or amendments that should be done, they are introduced in such roadmap. And this roadmap clearly reflects all of the directions of our cooperation, whether it's adding security to payments, or whether it's bringing some innovations and technology in a specific market, or whether it's even educated the government or the customers themselves in terms of how these payments would facilitate the economy, the cashless environment in a given state, and benefit with the end result for the given market. And this is where I think it is important, again, to coming back to the point that we were talking about earlier today, that we shouldn't be inventing a wheel once again if we're talking about even the government trying to embrace the new technologies of payments or regulations, because we have a government relations department which is actually the main face in terms of cooperating with governments and bringing the best of knowledge and expertise to them in terms of technology, payments, and all of the other questions that might be on the agenda of the government body.
Francois, and on the subject of bringing up regulators, getting regulators up to speed?
Well, we are regulators, so we try to be up to speed. But indeed, one of the questions is to hear from the needs of the private sector. And I think that's where it's difficult to organize, because sometimes what you call private sector can be different bodies. For example, if I take the railway undertakings, as it was said by my colleagues from UPU, you have private bodies and you have state-owned bodies, so they have divergent interest. So what is difficult for a regulator is to develop a vision that can both cope with, let's say, the public sector, which part of the rail transport is, and with the private sector. So that's a reason why we are trying to develop this backbone issue, because we think that it can improve the efficiency and having on board all the different kinds of actors. And I think that one of the most important things for a regulator is that the pressure of digitization, because the actors, the railway undertaking, because we are speaking of that for rail, they are realizing that if they cannot achieve a single level playing field, at some point there will be a very clever guys that will find the ways to integrate all this mess, because today it's, excuse me, more or less a mess for international transport, and have a very smart application like it has been done by Uber and whatever. And then this smart guy, he will offer the service. And then the railway undertaking, they will lose the contact with the customer. And I think this understanding is progressing among the sector. And I think that's one of the drivers to have better regulation. Thank you.
Okay, Anna?
Yeah, I was going to mention, I mean, there's lots of things to talk about regarding this, but I think that having a very good public-private sector engagement and in close collaboration between the private sector and the government is extremely important. It's important to know what's coming down the line, what new innovation is coming from the private sector, but it's also, I think it was discussed in the previous panel, that the private sector plays an important role of building political will for some of the regulations and some of the appropriations that are needed to modernize some of the regulatory agencies. For example, between the UPU and the World Customs Organization, we recently conducted a survey of the readiness, the digital readiness of postal operators and customs, because we know that it's important to have that advanced data information. We have issues with modernization, with digitalization, but it's not about pointing the finger to the postal operators, because in some countries, even the customs administrations are not automated enough to even receive the information. So we have a lot of work to do, and I think the private sector, the public, can be a very important catalyst to push us to keep on top of things.
And I've seen this in many industries, yeah, but isn't it a case of the reluctance of sharing the information?
There's a lot of, one, capturing the information is difficult
But
sometimes.
even for industries that have the information, there is a reluctance of sharing it for some reason.
Well, in some cases, there are actual privacy laws between countries,
Sure.
and we have to negotiate some of those exchanges, agreements for the exchange of information, and that's going to be critical for the future, because at the speed that we're trying to grow this, at the speed that we're trying to enable this new phenomenon, we need that automated and advanced information exchange.
I was going to ask you this question, but it's kind of, I'm going to flip to Mattia. Can I ask you this, though? Do you think, in conjunction, in working with customers, is it possible to achieve fast and efficient parcel processing without sacrificing safety and security?
Yes, it is, and we are working very closely to ensure that this is achievable throughout. Because we also have developed some solutions for customs declaration, where even goods, before they are taken, they are what do you call it? Pre-released, so that when they come through the customs, it is just swiping and it goes. That has reduced the time taken at the customs a great deal, because the person who is packaging and dispatching has this solution. So you tag it, and when it passes through the customs, just through screening, you know what it is, and you don't have to use a lot of bureaucracy to open up and check many things. So it is facilitating a great deal movement of parcels and goods.
Talking of security, we talk about cybercrime. That's one of the issues, you know, as we see the boom in e-commerce, we're more susceptible, I guess, and we've seen a lot of attacks. Fong, can I ask you this? I mean, as this region and along the Belt and Road increases e-commerce, they become more susceptible to cybercrime, would you say?
You mean the regions cooperation of the...
Well, okay. Let's talk about China then, and then we can relate it to here.
Yeah.
With the boom of e-commerce in China, has there been more cybercrime?
Cybercrime?
Hack attacks, getting information, stealing data.
Yeah, I know. I think the security issues are very important for the e-commerce's development, because the confidence and the trust is the foundation of promote the business of e-commerces. And in China, there have some security problems. And I think in this situation, the government's regulation is very important. And the government should regulate the market by the law. And then the problem of security could be solved. And I think then the consumers can have the confidence to use this method to, for example, to buy their goods through e-commerces. Yeah.
Andrea, can I touch on you? Could you touch on that about? Is there a concern as we increase?
Yes, definitely. Like as soon as we see the potential for a huge growth of trade or e-commerce, there's always a concern about the huge rates of fraud happening in the specific sphere. But again, coming back to my point, there is nothing unique about this region in terms of being afraid of crime, cybercrime in particular. And there are technologies, there are approaches, there are methods how to actually not only fight it, but even prevent it. And already a number of huge merchants worldwide, both in the Americas and in the Asia-Pacific region, are using technologies that are allowing them and to actually replace all the sensitive data from the customer's checkout process. That's the first point, right? And the second point, I think what is important about protecting the payment details as well as the personal details of the customers is actually making this like a transparent checkout process when the customer wouldn't even have to use his or her card to initiate the payment. And this is where the prevention of crime lies within, right? You do not use your card for payments, but you use your account details to make such payment. And these details are linked to a specific merchant so that even the merchant is hacked and the security breach is identified, these details will be completely unusable for the fraudster.
Okay. Just like I did, we're going to wrap it up here, and we're going to let you go out for lunch. But as I did last year, I'm going to pick on three. Anna, Francois, and Mutia, if I could just get two key takeaways that we can give to the organisers that are the key issues to progress e-commerce along the B&R.
I didn't have much chance to talk about the safety and security aspects, but clearly the only way for e-commerce to be that win-win solution is to make sure that everybody recognizes that this isn't the avenue for undervaluation or not paying the appropriate revenue or not complying with rules and regulations, because that would be very dangerous for all countries involved. So I think seeing e-commerce as a new way of doing business, but still complying with the rules and regulations and being committed to that will be very important. And of course, using technology and data to help us process it as quickly as we possibly can.
Okay, Francois, your two points.
Well, perhaps one idea, because we have several regulations, even internally to rail. And I think what we have to do is to not think it in terms of what is the scope of my regulation, but where are the interfaces between our regulation and how we cope with the problems, if any, where we have the interfaces between the regulation. And if we think in terms of interfaces, and the plural is important because there will be many, with the financial regulation, with the selling regulation and so on, but if we carefully think all the interfaces, I think we are very close to have a functional system.
Okay, and last but not least, Musha.
Yes, I'll also talk about the security, but here related to trust. I'm sure most of us, even those who have done online purchasing, the first time you are not very sure whether you're buying the right thing from the right people and it will actually arrive. So we need the regulators to work very hard on this so that they build trust among the citizens. They build trust among the market so that you're very sure what you're buying is going to come to you in good form and is worth your money. And on top of that, we need also to go further than that. There are even cultural issues involved here. There are people who believe in buying from a face they know. They want to talk to you first. They want to see you first. They want to know who is selling to me. So those are barriers that need to be worked upon, because if we are going to make this a shopping mall worldwide, then we must include everybody, and we have to address all those fears and uncertainties.
Okay.
Thank you.
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause, please, for our panelists on stage, our friends. Thank you to each and every one of you.